Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Wealthy Legacy Journey. Um, well, basically, the episode name for today is Into the Unknown. And as we talk through, as you guys know, last week I let you guys know that there were again changes. And it feels exhausting to even think about that. Just to just to think several months ago I started up, when we started this podcast back in May of 2023, I think it was. Um, I had started up NK Legacy Properties with Nathan, and then there was a transition of that, and I went to work on acquisitions for NTX, and now there's another transition, and just figuring out what's next. And it's been tough. And like, I'm not gonna lie, if you're looking for somebody who has had breakthrough success much quicker, I am not your guy. It was actually crazy. Just yesterday I was listening to this one podcast interview, and this guy was like, yeah, so basically, I I can't remember exactly how he said something like they started up doing, internet marketing, or not internet marketing, doing like an advertising kind of stuff for their own, like he was like a worship guy. And he's like, I did some advertising for my own worship stuff. And over the next 2 months, we really got it to grow. Then I started up an ad agency. And 6 months later, I made $900,000. And I was like, dang, that's like not at all been my experience in business. And maybe it's just a lack of focus that has caused that for sure. But I was just telling Libby yesterday, I was like, man, I've been doing this for like half a decade now, and like I can't seem to get it right. And I was just feeling a little bit, discouraged this week. And I'll tell you guys why here in a second, but I want to kind of start off with some stuff that is on my heart, on my mind, for as far as like expenses go. And so last week we actually went to a wedding. It was my brother-in-law's and new sister-in-law's wedding, and it was interesting though. While we were there were so many pressures to spend money. My wife was in the wedding, and so she had to get a dress. All the other ladies got really nice dresses, and Libby and I, being on our very strict budget, as you guys know right now, our every dollar budget. um, it was really just like, well, what do we have to wiggle with? Like, we're not going to look at extra money that we have set aside. We're not going to look at our emergency funds. We're not going to look at dipping into savings. Like, this isn't something that's an emergency. How do we just work with what we got? So my wife ended up finding a dress for the wedding that I think she bought for like $30. It was like 30 or $40. And whereas everybody else was like over 100, maybe over $200 for their dress. And I was so proud of her for being able to stick to her guns. Although Libby is way more of the saver out of the two of us, so I think it's easier for her to do that. But she did a great job in that. Then the wedding venue was about an hour away from our home, and some people had to go quite a bit further. But even other people who were about the same distance as us ended up getting a hotel room there. And everybody was saying like, hey, you guys should just get a hotel room. Like, while we were out there, they were like, you guys should just eat at the local restaurants and stuff like that. And it was so hard, but really when you look at it, like, we drove home every time. We packed sandwiches. We really stuck to our budget, like everything that we could to not spend money. And I'm pretty sure, if I really thought about it, the only things that we spent money on for the wedding, um, was, well, see, my wife did a whole bunch of the wedding planning, and so that was our gift to the bride and groom. And then so it was our time in that case. And so then Libby bought her dress, and then we paid for gas to get back and forth. And I'm pretty sure that that's all the expenses that we put into this. But if we had rented, a hotel room, especially like, what some of the other families did, where they had the double hotel room, one for them, one for their kids, just between like that and eating out and stuff, like we could have easily dropped $1,000, maybe a little bit more, just on a weekend. But we save that, and it's difficult, like in the moment when everybody's like, hey, you should do this, you should do that. It's difficult. There's a lot of people right now who think that we're in like financial trouble because of how we're saving money. And it's like we're not, I'm really excited to even say, like, on our emergency fund, like, we're built up to, I think we did the number the other day, it's like a little over 8,000. And so, since we started, the podcast in like May or June or whatever it was, we had like $27,000 worth of debt, a huge chunk of that being my truck. And so when we sold that, that immediately paid off like 19 grand of the debt. So a big chunk of that just got paid off selling the vehicles. But then there was, a considerable amount of other debt. And we just started cranking away at our debt. And then we've been cranking away at building up our emergency fund. And so we've gone from this like deficit, this in the red, this negative area, all the way up into positive territory. But when people see you cutting expenses, they immediately think there's like financial trouble. And it's like, no, it's just, we're not going to consume, consume, consume. We're not going to just spend, 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 spend. Because what I'll say is, even though there might be differences as far as, the whole debt thing goes between Dave Ramsey and Robert Kiyosaki and these other investors kind of in this space, anybody in between, the one thing that I'll say they do agree on is having discipline with your money. Every investor that I read, even the book that we did the book report on last week by Joel Greenblatt, he talks about having discipline with your money. And so having discipline with our money, having discipline with our finances is going to go a huge way in this journey, of building wealth, of building a legacy, of building freedom for our family. And even as I was thinking about, like, we just recently passed Christmas at the time of this recording, we're coming up on Valentine's Day, and it's like how many people just went all out for Christmas. And now, our kiddos, they go to their Mother's Day out 2 days a week, and they just sent out something like, hey, bring your Valentine's Day gift or whatever like that. And people are putting together gift baskets for their kids and stuff like that. And me and Libby were like, that's just crazy. Like, it's just all about consuming, 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 buying, 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 spending, spending, spending. And it's like, that's not what we want to be a part of. Um, and so, just, I guess all that to say is, be aware that there's going to be peer pressure. There's going to be pressures of, your friends, family, the people around you, the world around you, circumstances to spend, 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 buy, 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 to do, to go, go, go. But the problem is like you just get stuck. You just get stuck in this destructive habit, this destructive behavior. We're coming up on tax season right now, for example, and I have already heard so many people that are like, yeah, tax season's coming. I'm about to get my tax return. I'm going to spend it on this and this and this. And the second I hear that, I'm like, ooh, that is the S word. Like, spend. Like, it's starting to become this like negative, I want to hear, that you're investing, but to immediately take this extra money that you're going to get, which you actually loan to the government interest free all year, and then you're going to take it and you're just going to go buy something, and you're gonna spend money on somebody else's business, somebody else's investment, instead of investing into yourself. It's like, what is going on? I mean, I just talked to a guy like maybe 2 months ago. He told me about what he did with his tax return the year before, and he went out and bought like, like I think he said like two Xboxes and then like TV system and like all this gaming stuff. And it was like, bro, like I can't. That was hundreds of dollars. I don't know. I don't know how much this gaming stuff costs. Hundreds of dollars, maybe $1,000, maybe over 1,000. I don't really know, but I'm assuming it's not cheap for all of that stuff that he was like listing off to me. I'm like, could you imagine if you had found a vehicle to step inside of to be able to create returns on your money, to be able to see growth? And so as people are coming up on again on that time of year, I just almost want to like pull out the megaphone and be like, don't spend the tax return. And maybe that should be next week's episode name. But for real, it's like people just consume, 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 buy, buy, buy. So just be aware of that. Like, as you're in your journey, make sure you have the sensitivity meter turned up towards when people are trying to get you to fall into the American consumerism way, and be able to say, that doesn't take me towards my goal. Consuming like crazy and spending everything that I have does not take me towards my end goal. It takes me away from my end goal. But what can I do that would take me towards my end goal? Let me do more of that. Let me invest into myself. Let me, as Robert Kiyosaki says, I believe it was in Rich Dad Poor Dad, mind my own business, meaning tend to my own business, meaning to build my own business, which doesn't mean necessarily building a business from the ground up, but even just investing, even what we're doing in the tax sales. Um, it was interesting, and I know not everybody's going to struggle with this, but when I was on my call with Kane Pointin, he told me about a quote that his mom, Lisa Pointin, who's also in business, and they have a business thing together actually, as well. But he told me a quote that she hangs up over her desk, and the quote says, "Sometimes the biggest risk is investing regularly in the tried and the true." And I thought that was really good. And I know not every personality type is going to struggle with this. I know not everybody's going to struggle with this. For me, and actually, as I say this, I'm almost speaking to myself, and you're going to hear why in a little bit. Um, but it's investing regularly and almost also waiting for the try and the true. As I'm saying this, I really think I need to go. I believe the book is called. I heard about it again last week. It was that baseball book that I told you guys. It's not baseball, but he talks about. Oh, let me see if I can find it here right quick. This is kind of like an on the spot thought. Um, I think it is. Okay, yeah. So there's this book, The Science of Hitting by Ted Williams. It talks about staying inside of your zone. Classic guide to the single most difficult thing to do in sports by the greatest hitter of all times. But he talks about the science of just knowing what you're going to hit and going for it. And that I think I think I actually need to go through that book. And I specifically know I've heard of that book from Warren Buffett, and I think it would be healthy for me. So yeah, just a kind of a thought there. I'll leave it up on my phone. Maybe that'll be one of the next books that we read. But for me, I was thinking back to my journey and like what has really held me back over the last 5 years as I've been in real estate. And I thought, I'd always shy away from real estate in the end whenever I really had to step up to the plate to swing on my own, because I was never comfortable with the debt. And some people are way more comfortable with the debt. They're way more risk tolerant. I'm less risk tolerant. And I'm sure there's lots of things that attribute to that. For years though, I've let the lack of debt be a limiting factor to my investing journey and what I've done. But I'm really starting to feel led to change my mindset now though for how can I make this an empowering factor of my journey. I'm gonna pause this right quick. Give me one. Sorry, guys. Had to pause it right quick. I am out here in the trailer on my property, and I had left the door open because it's pretty outside, and I had a chicken trying to walk up into my office, my trailer here. So, anyways, how can I make that an empowering factor of my business? And I've really been thinking about like what kind of goals can I set that would allow me to open up some really cool doors, really incredible doors, that might be closed for others because of what I'm more comfortable with. And for me, like I realize that I'm more excited and comfortable with joint ventures, than I am with the idea of debt. Whereas a lot of other people in my space, at least at the level that I've been at, for the last few years, which is, a lot of like flips, minor land developments, all that kind of stuff. A lot of people really are attracted to debt rather than joint ventures. And so it's like, what kind of opportunities might that open for me if I was to go down more of the joint venture route? Um, and so that's just been something that's kind of I've been chewing on like, I wonder like how could I use this instead of like, oh, seeing it as a weakness because everybody else around me is using debt. Like how can I use it as a strength because maybe it's I can approach the market in a way that not everybody else does. I haven't exactly figured out the answer to that, but it's been a thought that's been on my mind is like, how can I use, how instead of letting debt be a limiting factor, how can I use my mindset, my openness and willingness for joint ventures, to be an empowering factor instead of a limiting factor? And another thing I just kind of thought of this week is I was like, man, a lot of times you have to slow down in order to speed up in life. And I was talking to Libby, and I was like, I realized like if you have like a manual car, you can't start off in fifth gear and then try to go. Like it's going to be incredibly difficult, if even possible, to get that to to go for you. You have to start in first gear, then second gear, then third gear. Um, but I realized like the problem is that as you're going through and as you're growing, like you also everybody knows okay, you start in first gear, but you can't just live in first gear. or else you're just like RPMs are through the roof, you're like way up there, and you're not actually like able to speed up any faster without just completely blowing up your transmission. You have to shift into second gear. You have to slow down your transmission in order to be able to bring it back up and get to actually go faster. Um, it's all you have to be able to shift gears. And one of the things that I realized is because I've been so concerned about debt and feeling like that's a limiting factor, I've just lived in first gear, maybe second gear, first to second gear over the last 5 years. Because I'm nervous about trying to use what I have as an empowering factor. And so I'm just like, you know what? I know first and second gear. And so I'm just going to live here in first and second gear. And I'll be honest, like I was actually talking to my dad this last week about his he wants to build like a mentoring program. And I asked him, I was like, well, what's possible? And he goes, oh, it's very easy to get up to like, because we actually took the principles from Double Dare Your Money. And I was like, what if you just set a goal of like every quarter you double the amount of clients you have? So right now you have zero. Next quarter, do one client. The next quarter do two, then four, then eight, then 16, then 32. And then I asked him, I said, out of all those, like, what do you think is going to be difficult? And he said he feels like up to 16 will be easy, but after that will be difficult. And I was like, okay, well, why is that? Well, first thing I asked him, I said, how many is the most amount of clients? Because I had a suspicion in my mind. So what's the most amount of clients that you've ever had at one time? And he said, the most amount of clients I've ever had is 20. And I was like, and that's why you think it's hard to break past 16 into 32, because the most you've ever had is 20. You've seen that it's possible to get to 20 clients, but you've not seen that it's possible to break beyond that point. And it kind of just hit me. I was like, man, I like if anybody were asking me like how easy can you make $100,000 in real estate, I would be like, absolutely. And it would be like no questions asked. I absolutely know that for sure. Like I know that I could, with enough brain power and finagling my way through, I could figure out how to make $100,000 in real estate. But a lot of it would be, hey, I have skill sets. How can I bring, joint venture value to the table? Why do I find it easy to bring joint venture value to the table to make $100,000 in real estate? Well, that's because I've done it, not just once, not just twice, but I've done it 3 times now. Um, and well, I guess we're working on completing that third iteration. It is on the market. The last deal that'll get us there again is on the market. But I have a mental barrier where I struggle to figure out like, how do I go from 100,000 to 1 million? It's interesting because I was talking to Nathan Bowers, who is a step beyond me, and his company Ambition Group. And I was just talking to him about it. He goes, "You just got to keep doing it. Like keep doing the thing. Like don't go to switch and do something else. Like just keep doing what you're doing that's working. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. Keep doing it." And I just kind of realized like after that conversation, I was like, wow, like for him, it's so easy because he's like, yes, here's how you get to 1 million in real estate. It's not complicated at all. But the reason that it's simple is because he's done it. And so now he has a clear roadmap in his mind of like how he would go about doing that process. His limiting factor isn't at 1 million. It's his ceiling might be somewhere else where it's like he's never reached that point. And he's trying to figure out how do you get to that point. Um, and so for me, like I realized in order to break past this ceiling, I have to be confident enough to shift gears, step into the unknown, which is why the episode name is Into the Unknown, to step into the unknown and, to be willing to, going back to the quote from Lisa Pointin, sometimes the biggest risk is investing regularly in the tried and the true, to stay committed to the tried and the true, to sticking to the tried and the true. And shifting gears. And so, anyways, there was all of this like positive mindset stuff that was happening since the last episode that I recorded. And then all of a sudden, starting on Sunday afternoon, life just, I call it like getting hit by 2x4s, the 2x4s of life, because it literally feels like sometimes life will just take this 2x4 and just like, bam, like clothesline you, and you're just like knocked out. Well, Sunday afternoon on our way home from church, we're going down the highway, 60 miles an hour, just no problem in the world. Somebody comes up behind us, I mean, flying and just boom, just trucks into the back of our minivan with me and my wife, the kids. Praise the Lord, we're all okay. We walked away from the accident relatively unscathed. Nothing broken, nothing bleeding. just some bruising and minor sprains and stuff like that. Um, but I didn't even realize how much of a curveball taking care of this process was going to be in my life. I was like, it's going to be okay. We'll get it figured out. And it's just been like every day there's been something new to figure out. And then that happened Sunday. And so then Monday, almost all day, I feel like I spent on the phone with different people. Then on Tuesday, Monday evening, we ended up having to go to the doctor to get everybody checked out. And then Tuesday, I had to wake up. I went to the tax sale this last Tuesday, woke up at like 5 a.m. to go to the tax sale on time. We didn't get home the previous night until like 10 o'clock. So I get home at 10 o'clock, put the kids down, which is probably the latest our kids have ever been up, I think. We've got, a couple little ones. They eat dinner really quick, put them down for bed. Then we went and crashed, woke up again earlier than normal after, basically going to bed later or getting home definitely later than normal, pretty much going to bed later than normal, waking up earlier than normal, driving all the way, hours to the tax sale, getting there. Apparently, they had a record number of people show up to this tax sale, which was wonderful for me. Um, but unfortunately, because of all that competition, we were not able to. We got outbid on all the properties that we were going for, and so that was a little bit defeating. And so then drove all the way back, and then I had to drive about an hour and a half the other way in the Metroplex to go walk some properties. And it was just like a full day of driving. And then as I'm on the road, I've got people calling me from leads because I'm still trying to close out leads for NTX. And I've got people calling me for the insurance stuff. And I just like feel like my head is spinning. Um, but it's interesting because my dad went with me to the tax sale because he wanted to just be a part of that process. And so I was like, yeah, you can tag along. And as we were out there talking, that's when we talked about his like mentorship thing and that he's wanting to create. And we were really talking about staying in your lane and getting focused and getting, specific. And I was like, this is what I'm doing. Like, I want to buy small land at tax sales. I want to build into JVing more and more. But on this side, I want to actually start creating the joint ventures, not just stepping into joint ventures. And I want to figure out how I can, scale this up as far as like we joint venture with people, but we don't go into debt. Like, we're not debt financed, we're JV financed. Um, and so we're talking about all that, and I kind of had this like realization. As you guys know, I've been in the Cash Flow Academy with Andy Tanner, which has been super great. I really enjoyed it. But it's all about stocks. And so now, as we're looking at, okay, we're having to cut life expenses because the acquisitions deal with NTX is, coming to an end. Um, it's really been like, well, what do we cut? And I just kind of have been mulling on this, like being an employee to myself. And it's like, well, if my business is paying for courses and supplements for one of my employees and my business is real estate, do I want to pay for my employee and do I want my employee investing their time into learning stocks and options? And so, as cool as that course was, as much as I enjoyed it, I realized that it was another way that I was keeping myself stuck in first gear versus how can I put time, energy, and effort into growing in further into the real estate space and trying to shift gears again into higher and higher gears. But I'll be honest with you guys, like after the accident, after not getting anything at the tax sale, after canceling the Cash Flow Academy because realizing like it wasn't laser focused, and just some other stuff that's come up this week, I've been feeling really defeated. I've been trying to walk into this unknown. One of the other things like with Double Dare Your Money, the plates haven't sold yet. Nothing has sold yet. I realized that I probably didn't buy everything deep enough to be able to give the discount that I want to give to be able to move items quickly. And so I'm looking at now, like, do I take a loss? Do I still do the dishes? And Libby reminded me, she's like, you've had a lot of change in the last few days. We talked about the Cash Flow Academy and she agreed with that decision. And she was like, yeah, I mean, based off of trying to be focused and everything like that. But she taught, we were like, she's like, you were learning all this stuff with the car accident. You didn't get anything at the tax sale, and that's a little bit deflating. But she, for her, she's like, just wait and you go to the next tax sale and then go to the next tax sale. And like, we know that it works over time. It just might not work, at the first one. But I wanted to see those instant results. You know how that is. And it's been really tough. It's been really a hard mental week. I'm really tired right now, to be honest with you guys. Um, not even just tired physically, just tired mentally. Um, not feeling as like excited or exuberant as I was last week. Just feeling really kind of just down and somber. But it's been an exhausting week at that, and even Libby said, she's like, you had a doctor's note where you were supposed to take off 2 days of work from the accident to heal and recover. And she's like, a part of that might have been like mental recovery too. But being self-employed, I got that note and I just kind of was like chuckled inside of my head. And I'm like, there's no way I can take off 2 days of work.
Yeah.
Nor do I really want to because I enjoy what I do. But it's been a hard week. But you know what? We all have hard weeks. We all have hard weeks. We have situations that don't go the way we want them to. We all sometimes are going to face losing our job. Um, but it's how do you handle that situation? Do you break down? Do you go back into destructive habits, or do you continue to work forward? And so for Libby and I, it's how do we continue to move forward? How do we, figure out how to just cover our basic needs, even if there's other joint ventures out there that I could tap into. And I'm kind of exploring some opportunities and not even trying to like devote a whole bunch of time there, but it's like, what can I do to just make ends meet, to just meet that minimum threshold inside of my business, and then the rest of my time in my business is going towards investing my capital. So that's been kind of a thought, instead of like bleeding into our capital pool, just how do we continue just to at least make up a majority of what we need every month, and so that way we can keep that expenditures, that loss, as low as possible, and so that way we can maintain our capital for as long as possible, really keep that hourglass. You have a little bit coming in, even if it's not as much as is going out every month. If you have a majority coming in, it's very slowly emptying, and then we're going to take what we can out of the top of the hourglass, reinvest it, and we're going to try to create returns faster than it's going out. But that really means really limiting our expenditures right now, and being really disciplined inside of our finances. But one thing that really helped me is, and I want to show you guys this. I actually uh, wrote on my mirror the other day my goals, and we're almost done here. But I want to show you guys what I did, and maybe just like an encouragement for you guys as to what you're going to do. And so I might even end up posting that on the Wealthy Legacy Journey Facebook page. But you can see there is on the left side, I just put, what is it? What is the overall behaviors that I'm looking for out of myself? And I wrote down base hits, laser focused, dedicated, and interdependent tortoise. And then on the other side of my mirror, I just wrote what my game plan is right now, and I just said cash, real estate, land deals through financial JVs and personal purchases to go from 100,000 to a million. And so that's my laser focused base hits, dedicated, interdependent tortoise goals. So it's even not, right now I'm not looking at buying taxes at our houses at the tax sale. I'm just looking at, can I buy small land and flip that land for a profit from the tax sales? And just trying to figure out like how can I make this thing work? How can I just create, a churn here? Um, but yeah, so then I've been asking myself the question is like, okay, aside from tax sales, like, is there anywhere else that I can go ahead and try to deploy like at least like 5 to 10 grand in real estate? Or do I just wait for next month? Do I stay focused? Like, at what point do I pivot? I don't know the answer to that question. I really don't. I've been sitting here asking myself that question. Um, I'll just be honest with you guys, wrapping up. Like, I've been waking up like the last 2 mornings and around like 4 o'clock in the morning, just stressed, and I can't go back to sleep, and I'm stressed out of my mind. I'm thinking about the car. I'm thinking about the tax sales, and I'm thinking about how am I going to be able to not go through all my capital, and how am I going to be able to make this work, and do I need to do something else, and am I on the right path? Am I doing the right thing? Is this even going to work? And even as I'm talking right now, talking this through, I realize that it's like one of the more destructive things that I could do is start spending more, which is what I've done in the past. And that might sound simple, but I feel like for me, it was kind of like a fight or flight reflex. And for me, it was like I wanted to, I wanted to flight. Like I wanted to, okay, let me go, spend money to like learn how to do something else. And maybe the reason that this wasn't working easy enough or fast enough was because I didn't have the training that I needed to make this easier or faster. Um, and it's funny, it kind of just came to me as I was talking out loud. But yeah, so that's why we stopped. We're not paying for the Cash Flow Academy every month anymore, for now, because that's not in our lane, and it's also an expenditure out that we don't need right now. And you know, I wanted to go to this Two Comma Club live that Russell Brunson's putting together, because I love the Two Comma Club, group, and everything that, the ClickFunnels community and what Russell Brunson puts together there. But I realize it's not my wheelhouse, and I don't need the added expenditures going out right now. Right now, it's, how can I keep my expenses low? How can I keep, some level of income coming in? And then, on that, and then really looking for those opportunities, which is why I think I want to read this book, The Science of Hitting, because I know vaguely that this book is about, finding your sweet spot, and, just knocking those out all day long, and just finding that consistency. And so, as I'm walking into the unknown, I'm trying to figure out what consistency looks like. And to be honest with you guys, I'm not 100% sure what consistency looks like, but we're going to figure that out together. And I'm excited to figure that out together. So, anyways, yeah, maybe that was a whole episode about nothing really, or maybe at least an episode for one day I can look back, and you guys can look back, and my kids can look back at, there was even times in this journey where I had no idea what I was doing or what came next. And I feel like I'm walking into the fog of the unknown, just happen to have faith that this is a path worth walking. Um, so anyways, as always, let's close out with our identity mantra. And then we'll wrap up for today. So our identity mantra is: I explore the unknown, I conquer new frontiers, my journey is powerful, and my wake is a wealthy legacy. And just a reminder for you guys and for myself, wealthy is not just an incredible amount of money necessarily. Wealthy is simply the ability to cover your monthly expenses without having to lift a finger. That's not that unachievable, especially when you get your expenses low. And I'm saying that to myself. Wealthy doesn't have to mean multimillionaire. Wealthy just means, do I have the passive income to take care of my expenses without having to lift a finger? So that way I can focus on taking my over and above money and investing it to create even future greater wealth. And legacy is leaving a long-lasting impact on others who come after you as they receive the fruit of your labor, whether that fruit be good or bad. So let's choose together to leave a good legacy. With all that said, don't forget, if you want any of the resources, we didn't really talk about anything too specifically today, but I'll put especially the one quote from Lisa Pointin into the Google Docs. And there's a whole bunch of other great stuff in the Google Docs there as well. I just want to remind you that all the Amazon links inside the Google Docs is an affiliate link. And so it really helps out the channel whenever you use those links. And with all that said, this has been another episode dedicated to you and your own personal wealthy legacy journey. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I will see you guys next week. Bye, y'all.